So about a month ago, I posted this video where I spec'd out, built, and tested a baller Ryzen system based on the 1800X. I explained in that video that this system would be my daily driver for at least a while until I could rebuild my 6900K system with SLI 1080 Ti's. Although I've made a few changes from what you guys saw in that video, for the most part the system remains the same. I've been using it to power through productivity tasks and to do some sporadic gaming when I have a chance, and I wanted to talk about my experience and how I view Ryzen 7 as a platform now that I have a great deal of information to draw on. Spoiler alert, it's not all sunshine and roses. So before I dive into my overall experience with the Ryzen system, I wanted to make clear that almost as soon as I was done with the build video and the benchmarks, I had to swap out the Strix 1080 Ti for a Founders Edition GTX 1080. As I talked about in my review video, the Strix card didn't actually belong to me and was a generous loaner from a good friend. I didn't want to put one of my FE 1080 Ti's in the Mastercase Pro 6 as the green LED logo wouldn't match at all with the purple and blue I have going on in there. Luckily, I had blacked out the logo of a 1080, and as I didn't necessarily need the ridiculous power of the 1080 Ti for this temporary build, it worked out just fine. I ran the system in this configuration until just the other day when some issues I was having caused me to have to swap out the memory. I'll get into those issues more in a minute. But for now, I'm running a 32 gig kit of Corsair Vengeance LED. Let's first talk about the things I really liked. I have the 1800X running all cores at 3.9 GHz 24 hours a day. This isn't the highest overclock I could achieve, but for daily use, it's stable and fairly cool. Even just using a single 140mm AIO, the Ryzen chip sat in the low to mid 30s at idle and only spiked up to about 71 degrees at 100% load in the IDA64 stress test. Compared to the Intel chips I'm used to, this is downright chilly. Being able to cool an 8-core processor with a small AIO means that small form factor builds don't necessarily have to worry about dissipating a whole bunch of extra heat. Also, it leaves more room in your chassis for, well, I guess anything you want to put in there. Gaming performance, although measurably behind that of Intel's mainstream lineup, is on par with their enthusiast lineup. Yes, if you look at the raw numbers, Ryzen does put up empirically worse scores, but in real-world scenarios, you don't notice the difference between running Doom at 120 FPS versus running at 113 FPS. I had no problems running my favorite games on ultra settings, and I didn't give a second thought to the platform that it was running on. There was no perceivable difference in load times, and although we certainly wouldn't expect there to be, there weren't any compatibility issues or anything like that either. The main use of this system, however, was productivity, specifically video editing in Adobe Premiere. Render times overall were slightly behind that of a 6900K, although not enough to make me care. If a video takes an extra minute to render, that's just another minute I have to work on the thumbnail. There would be major concerns if the difference was more pronounced and it took double the time to complete an export, but this isn't at all the case. The system looks great, and the Asus Crosshair 6 Hero motherboard is beautiful and fully loaded with features for half the cost of similar boards on the Intel side. That's the biggest selling point of Ryzen, and one that's not lost on the majority of people considering switching from Intel. I will say though that I did run into some difficulties that I want to talk about. The biggest problem I had was actually in Premiere, where timeline scrubbing of complicated edits with layers of effects, color correction, transitions, and B-roll got to be really bogged down. Simple timelines or those with 1080p video were really no problem at all, and the 1800X chewed right through them. My issue is that all of my footage is shot at 4K, and I would often have to pause and restart the playback of a video that I'm editing in order to clear up some unintentional stop-motion choppiness. I also had the program crash on me several times, and I really couldn't figure out why. Maybe I just got lucky, but I never ran into any of these issues with the X99 platform. Eventually, I decided that it couldn't hurt to upgrade the memory from the original 16 gigs of Dominator Platinum to 4 8 gig sticks of Vengeance LED. It took me a full hour to do this swap, as the system refused to post with the new memory. Eventually I had to clear the CMOS and start over, but the Ryzen platform is still extremely picky about RAM, and I'm stuck running this 3200 speed kit at 2400 MHz in order to have a functioning system. This is occurring despite the fact that the BIOS on this board is updated to the latest release, which was supposed to fix these kinds of issues. AMD has promised a microcode update, which should hopefully help, but until this all gets sorted out, make sure that you're not configuring your system with anything other than recommended kits of memory. This is a frustrating restriction on an enthusiast platform, and not one I would want to have to deal with as a consumer. But overall, this has been a positive experience, and I haven't shied away from recommending Ryzen chips. I hope we see AMD and partner manufacturers continue to iron out the kinks, and maybe by the end of the year, we'll be able to say that these growing pains were all worth it. So what do you guys think of the Ryzen platform? Are you considering it for your next build? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, don't forget to get subscribed to the channel if you're not already, and hit that like button because I told you to. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.